There comes a moment in your walk with God when you realize that the strongest voice in your life cannot be fear, cannot be symptoms, cannot be emotions, and cannot be the pressure of what you feel in your body. The strongest voice must be God's Word. If you want your body to rise, if you want your strength renewed, if you want healing to take root, then His Word has to become the authority you lean on, the truth you speak, and the foundation you stand on. You cannot feed your spirit weakness and expect strength. You cannot feed your thoughts fear and expect peace. Your body listens to what your heart believes, and your heart believes what your mouth continually speaks. That is why you must speak His Word over your body until His Word becomes louder than the pain, louder than the doubt, louder than the report, and louder than the discouragement that tries to pull you down. When you open your mouth and speak God's Word, something begins to shift on the inside. Faith rises, strength stirs, light pushes against the darkness that tries to settle in your thoughts. Your body is not just physical, it responds to what is happening in your spirit. When your spirit is fed with truth, your body feels the impact. When your heart is filled with faith, your body receives the influence of that faith. And when your mouth declares God's promise, you are aligning your entire being with the life that flows from His Word. His Word carries divine power, not emotional power, not motivational power, divine power. It doesn't just encourage, it transforms. It doesn't just comfort, it strengthens. It doesn't just inspire, it renews. That is why you must keep His Word coming out of your mouth daily. Your body hears every word you speak. Your cells respond to the atmosphere of your thoughts. Your organs respond to the peace or the stress that fills your heart. When you choose to speak life, you are choosing to create an environment inside you where healing can flourish. When you consistently speak God's Word, you are planting seeds of strength that begin to push out fear, push out heaviness, push out hopelessness, and push out the lies that say you will never get better. Your body is not your enemy. It was created by God, designed by Him, shaped with purpose, and capable of responding to the life He breathes through His Word. The world will teach you to speak what you feel. God teaches you to speak what He said. Feelings shift, but His Word is steady. Symptoms change, but His promise remains. Emotions rise and fall, but His truth is unshakable. When you begin to speak His Word instead of your feelings, you are choosing the higher truth. You're choosing strength over fear. You're choosing faith over frustration. You're choosing life over limitation. Speaking His Word doesn't deny what you feel. It invites His power into what you feel. It doesn't reject reality. It calls in a greater reality. It doesn't ignore challenges. It positions you above them. Sometimes people say, "I don't feel strong enough to speak the Word." But that is exactly why you must speak it. The word spoken creates strength. The word released builds faith. The word declared strengthens your inner man. You don't speak because you feel strong. You speak to become strong. You don't speak because everything looks right. You speak because God's Word is right. You don't speak because the situation feels easy. You speak because His promise is higher than the situation. Every time His Word passes through your lips, you are pushing your body into alignment with His truth. As a young person, you're surrounded by voices, friends, social media, pressure, comparison, fear, stress, expectations. But none of those voices can do what God's Word does. His Word brings calm to your mind. His Word brings focus to your heart. His Word brings hope to your future, and His Word brings strength to your body. You may not see results instantly, but every time you speak His Word, something is happening. Faith is building, peace is settling, strength is forming, healing is working. You can't see roots growing underground, but they're growing. You may not see all the ways God is working in your body, but He is working. Speaking the Word is not a ritual, it's a spiritual connection. It's you agreeing with God. It's you aligning your thoughts with His truth. It's you releasing faith into the atmosphere around you and the environment within you. When your mouth agrees with God's promise, your heart gains courage and your body gains direction. Your body follows the voice of your spirit, and your spirit follows the voice of God's word. That is why life begins to rise inside you when you speak it. There may be days when you feel tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed. Days when speaking God's word feels like the last thing you want to do. But those are the moments when His word becomes the most powerful. When you speak it through tears, it strengthens you. When you speak it through fear, it anchors you. When you speak it through exhaustion, it revives you. When you speak it through struggle, it carries you. Every time you speak the word, you are reminding your body that it belongs to God. It is loved by God, and it is strengthened by God. Your body may feel weak, but God's word is not. Your emotions may feel low, but God's word is not. Your situation may feel uncertain, but God's word is not. When His word becomes the strongest voice in your life, everything else begins to bow. Worry bows, stress bows, fear bows, confusion bows, and weakness bows. Speak His word, speak life, speak truth, speak strength. Your body hears you, and your body responds to the life you declare through His word when you begin to understand that God's word is more than information, more than inspiration, more than ancient sentences on old pages. Something shifts on the inside of you. His word becomes life to your inner being. It becomes strength to your heart, clarity to your mind, stability to your emotions, and peace to every place that feels shaken. When you speak His word, you aren't just repeating phrases. You're agreeing with the God who created you. You're aligning your thoughts with His thoughts and your words with His promises. The world around you may present symptoms of weakness, pressure, confusion, worry, or fear, but God's word speaks a greater truth. His word brings light into places that feel heavy. His word brings hope into places that feel tired. His word brings peace where stress tries to rise. And the moment you lift your voice and speak what God has already said, something begins shifting inside you long before anything shifts outside you. You speak His word not to convince God to do something, but to convince your own heart of what He has already declared. You speak His word because your spirit responds to truth. Your mind may wander, but your spirit knows the sound of God's voice. Your thoughts may waver, but your spirit stands tall when God's promises come alive on your lips. Many people wait to feel strong before they speak strong, but that's backward. Strength comes when you speak strength. Peace comes when you speak peace. Faith rises when you speak faith. Your words create pathways for God's truth to flow through your life. When discouragement tries to pull you downward, your voice can lift you upward. When doubts start whispering, your voice can drown them out. When fear tries to intimidate you, your voice can silence it. There's something powerful about hearing yourself declare what God has said. It makes truth real. It makes faith rise. It brings your heart back into alignment with heaven. There will always be moments when feelings try to dominate your faith. There will always be moments when circumstances try to contradict what God has spoken. But that's exactly why your voice matters. You don't fight inward pressure with silence. You fight it with the word. You don't overcome heaviness by agreeing with it. You overcome it by speaking truth into it. When thoughts of worry creep in, you speak God's peace. When discouragement tries to settle, you declare God's strength. When confusion swirls around you, you speak God's clarity. His word in your mouth isn't empty. It carries authority because He stands behind every word He has spoken. You don't have to understand how everything will work out. You don't have to see how God will bring answers. You simply align yourself with His promises. You speak what He says, and your heart rises to match it. God's word brings life because it carries His breath. When you speak it, you breathe in what God breathes out. It refreshes you from the inside. It renews hope where disappointment tried to settle. It restores strength where pressure tried to drain you. It builds confidence where insecurity tried to creep in. There's something unexplainable but undeniable that happens when you choose to declare God's truth in the middle of what feels difficult. You start seeing differently, thinking differently, responding differently. The situation may not instantly shift, but you do, and when you shift, everything else begins following. Speaking His word is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about reminding yourself who God is in the middle of it all. It's about lifting your focus off the problem and onto the one who walks with you through every problem. The more you speak His word, the more your heart steadies, the more your faith strengthens, and the more your peace deepens. There is a discipline to choosing God's word when your feelings want to choose something else. But that discipline builds resilience, it builds inner strength, it builds a foundation inside you that cannot be shaken. Every time you choose to declare God's promises, you push back against doubt's influence. Every time you speak His truth, you close the door on fear's attempts to control your mind. Every time you lift your voice with His word, you give yourself something firm to stand on when everything else feels uncertain. You're not trying to talk yourself into something. You're reminding yourself of what's already true. You're speaking from a place of confidence in God's character, not from a place of wishful thinking. His word does not return empty. It does not lose power. It does not weaken with time. And when you put that word on your lips, it begins strengthening you in ways you can't always see immediately, but will always feel eventually. Your voice becomes an instrument that shapes your inner world. Your words create the atmosphere your heart lives in. Speak worry and you feed worry. Speak fear and fear grows. Speak doubt and doubt gains ground. But speak God's word and peace rises. Speak truth and confidence steadies you. Speak hope and your spirit lifts. Speak life and heaviness loses its grip. You don't have to feel powerful to speak powerful words. The power is in the word itself, not in your feeling. You just have to open your mouth and release what God has already said. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. The more you declare His truth, the stronger your inner life becomes. And as your inner life strengthens, you begin living from a place of calm, confidence, and spiritual clarity that nothing around you can shake. There comes a point where you realize that speaking God's word is not just a moment in prayer, not just a part of a routine, not just something you do when you feel a spiritual push. It becomes a lifestyle, a rhythm, a steady flow that strengthens you from the inside out. His word was never meant to be spoken once and forgotten. It was meant to be your daily nourishment, the steady stream that keeps your spirit awake, your faith alive, and your courage steady. You don't wait for circumstances to improve before speaking His truth. You speak His truth so your heart can rise above the circumstances. The world around you may send messages of pressure, disappointment, or fear, but the word you speak brings messages of strength, peace, and stability. When you choose to speak what God has said, you are choosing the higher voice. You are choosing the voice that created the universe, the voice that holds everything together, the voice that never fails. And when that voice becomes your confession, something shifts inside you that circumstances cannot undo. There is a power released when you declare what God has promised. You begin to sense a new boldness rising in your heart, not because you suddenly became strong on your own, but because your spirit is feeding on truth. You can feel the difference between days when you stay silent and days when you let His word come out of your mouth with conviction. Silence allows pressure to grow, but speaking truth releases it. Silence gives fear room to whisper, but speaking God's word shuts those whispers down. Silence keeps your heart confined, but speaking His word sets it free. Even when you don't feel like saying anything, even when your emotions seem tired, even when you feel like the circumstances are too big, that is when your voice becomes the key to lifting yourself into a higher place. You don't speak because everything is perfect. You speak because God is faithful. You don't speak because the situation is easy. You speak because the situation needs His word more than ever. There is something powerful about hearing truth come out of your own mouth. Hearing yourself say what God has already said brings alignment between your heart and heaven. Faith is not built by wishes or positive thoughts. Faith is built by truth spoken, believed, and held onto. The more you speak His promises, the more your heart begins to agree with them. The more you declare His truth, the more your mind begins to shift toward confidence instead of fear. Your words become the steering wheel of your inner world. If your thoughts try to drift into worry, your voice can pull them back. If your emotions begin to sink, your voice can lift them. If discouragement tries to settle in your heart, your voice can push it out. Speaking His word is not about denying how you feel. It's about refusing to be ruled by those feelings. You place yourself under the authority of truth, not emotion. And truth always brings peace where emotion brings pressure. Every time you speak His word, you are reminding yourself that God is the one who sustains you. You are reminding yourself that you are not walking alone, not fighting alone, not trying to handle everything in your own strength. His word reminds you that He is your source of calm, your source of clarity, your source of peace. When life tries to drown you in noise, His word becomes the quiet strength that pushes through the noise. When you feel uncertain about the future, His word becomes the steady voice that says you are held, guided, and protected. When everything feels overwhelming, His word becomes the anchor that keeps you from slipping into fear. And this is why speaking His word is so important, not because it magically changes everything around you instantly, but because it changes you. And when you change, everything else around you eventually follows. There may be days when speaking His word feels difficult because everything inside you is tired or frustrated. But those are the days when it works the most. Those are the days when the word you speak becomes strength in the places where you feel weak. Those are the days when your voice becomes a reminder that you are not defined by what is happening to you, but by what God has spoken over you. The word you speak becomes a shield against the negativity trying to influence your heart. It becomes a light when your thoughts feel dark or heavy. It becomes the push that gets you through moments that would have held you back. And the more you practice this, the more you begin to notice how quickly your heart responds, how your peace returns faster, how your courage rises stronger, how your confidence becomes steadier. Speaking His word trains your heart to stay anchored in truth rather than tossed by feelings. God never intended for you to navigate life with an empty heart. He gave you His word so that you could stay spiritually nourished, filled, strengthened, and uplifted. When His word becomes your confession, your atmosphere changes. Your reactions change, your choices change, your perspective changes. You begin to see challenges differently, not as threats, but as places where God's promises will show themselves true. You begin to face uncertainty with calmness because His word has already settled your heart. You begin to move through the day with a quiet assurance that comes from knowing truth, speaking truth, and holding truth. And every time you speak His word, you are building a spiritual strength that lasts, a strength that carries you through seasons and situations with a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away.